Welcome to money4mzansi, working toward a joy economy for all in South Africa by 2030. This is part 1 of a 4-part video series. Please watch the other 3 videos following on from this one. So, to present what must change about how South Africa works, we must first agree how South Africa currently works, or is supposed to work. Let's take Johannesburg, home to just over 7 million South Africans. How does all this hang together? We've got millions of people living in homes, eating food, having clothes and shoes and roads and water. Do we all do this by ourselves? Do we all produce our own food, our own roads? Of course not. No, we all work together. We work together to create our roads, our homes, water reticulation infrastructure. We work together in factories to produce goods and services. We grow food. We have retail shops where everyone works together to make goods and services available closer to people's homes. We build schools together to educate our children. So we don't do any of this stuff by ourselves. We all collaborate. We all work together. But this is interesting. If there's millions of us working together to produce products and services, how do we determine who gets what? And who gets how much of what we all produce together? Well, the mechanism we use is a point system. It's like a game we all play together. And the points that we use to track what is being produced and who can get how much of what is being produced together, that point system is money. And money is our oxygen of collaboration. Imagine tomorrow morning if all of the bank balances in all our banks were just zeroed out and were made incapable of working. All the ATMs stopped working, all the banks stopped working. How would we collaborate? How would we know who can get what of how much we produce together? So yes, we've become absolutely dependent on this concept of money to coordinate our joint actions to provide a life of safety, sustenance, and some joy to each other. But where does money come from? The answer might surprise you. So let's have a look. Here we have Vusi. And Vusi is an entrepreneur. Vusi believes that his neighborhood needs a KFC. Vusi has it'll cost about 2 million rand for Vusi to create this KFC. Now Vusi doesn't have the 2 million rand. But what he can do is he can create a business plan. And he can take this business plan to a bank. And if the bank looks at Vusi and he seems like a trustable, knowledgeable fellow, and they think that perhaps maybe it is a good idea to get a KFC in Vusi's neighborhood, the bank will create the money to create the KFC. Let's see how this works. So Vusi goes to the bank with his business plan. The bank agrees to execute this business plan, and the bank now creates 2 million rand. Now this is an important thing to realize. The bank doesn't have 2 million rand, it creates 2 million rand. It goes to its computer and says, let's have 2 million rand more in South Africa. Enter, and thank you, the 2 million rand has been created. But every time a bank creates money, it creates the flip side of money. It creates debt. So whenever money is created by a bank, the bank also creates debt. And in this case, the debt is recorded against Vusi. And the bank says, Vusi, you owe us 2 million rand, and you must pay it back at 8% over 5 years. And this 2 million rand is now used to pay the people that build the KFC. So Vusi doesn't build it himself. The 2 million rand is used to actually create this asset, this KFC. And Vusi must now prove that this was a good idea. So once the KFC has been completed, Vusi must now somehow pay back this 2 million rand debt. So Vusi must attract customers. And as he attracts customers, he can make a profit. And instead of just buying cars and toys, he needs to take some of that profit and pay it back to the bank. Now what's interesting is this is basically Vusi proving to society that creating a KFC there was a good idea. So The 2 million rand cash is the mechanism by which we create new assets, and the debt is the mechanism we used to make sure that these assets we create were necessary or needed by our society. So Vusi must now prove that this KFC asset is actually needed by society by attracting customers. And as customers pay, Vusi can pay back the 100,000 rand to the bank. And now Vusi only owes 1.9 million rand. Now what's interesting is when this 100,000 rand is paid back to the bank essentially destroys that money. It's not physically destroyed, burnt or anything. It just means that the amount of money in South Africa has now been reduced by 100,000 rand because it goes off account balances. It's not sitting in anybody's balance anymore. It's gone. So as Vusi continues running a successful KFC, he continues paying back more money to the bank until eventually Vusi has paid back all of the money. And the bank has, by this time, we have sort of reduced or extracted, by this time, the whole 2 million rand back out of society. And this was the proof to all of us that creating a KFC was indeed a good idea. But Vusi actually pays back 2.3 million rand because the bank charges about 300,000 rand interest, which it uses to cover its cost of operations. Vusi now owns the KFC. It is his private property. So Vusi came up with an idea. Society, via banks, created the money to realize the idea. Vusi had to prove that this was a good idea, and by paying back the debt, and if it turned out that it is a good idea, then Vusi owns the asset and it is private property. Now things could also have gone badly. Vusi could have maybe had no customers. Maybe there was already a KFC just 200 meters down the road, and it had better customer service and was better situated. So no one goes to Vusi's KFC. In this case, Vusi might not be able to pay back the debt. And if he isn't able to pay back the debt, the bank and society declares Vusi as bankrupt. Now, this basically means that when someone is declared bankrupt, it's essentially society saying, you have ideas that don't pan out. You shouldn't put forward more ideas for a while until you prove back to us that you're an upstanding citizen and you don't waste money by creating frivolous assets that no one needs. But what happens now to this debt? Well, the debt moves back to the bank. So Vusi is declared bankrupt and the 2 million rand debt is now sitting with the shareholders of the bank. Now, the money that was used to build the KFC, to pay the people that built the KFC, that money is in society now. It's out there, running around in people's wallets and bank accounts. But the bank is now responsible for this 2 million rand debt. And the only way for the books to be settled is for the bank's actual shareholders to take some of their money and settle this debt on behalf of society. So that's basically, the bank faces a penalty as well. So if banks continue approving bad business cases, the shareholders of banks become liable for the debts associated with these bad business cases. So banks are very careful indeed about who they create money for and to what goal. So banks extend credit. So let's look at the history of this in South Africa from 1966 until about 2015. The amount of credit, the amount of loans that banks made increased from 5.5 billion rand to currently there is about 3.3 trillion rand worth of credit extended in South Africa. So all of us together as individuals, companies, families, governments, whatever, we owe the banks 3.3 trillion rand, which also means that if we look at the amount of money in society, the blue line, we see it's roughly equal to the amount of credit in society. So this illustrates that credit is money, and money is credit. So over the past, couple of decades, we've increased the amount of credit and therefore the money supply in South Africa by 54,000%. Now, some of this is due to inflation, but a lot of it is because we have built many homes, buildings, factories, shopping centers. So this additional money represents our economy increasing in size. We have more assets, we've got more stuff, and we're producing more, and therefore our money supply is increasing to enable all of these different transactions to take place. But some of it is also due to inflation. So banks create money as they make loans. Now this may sound strange. Some people don't believe this, but let's look at the Bank of England. They are the second oldest bank in the world, reserve bank in the world. And they published a couple of articles in 2014 and some videos explaining to people where money comes from. And they summarize it as follows. Where does money come from? In the modern economy, most money takes the form of bank deposits. But how those bank deposits are created is often misunderstood. The principal way in which they are created is through commercial banks making loans. So if you come across someone who doesn't believe that money comes into existence as banks create loans, point them towards the Bank of England and they can take up their argument with them. So what do we create money for? Do we create money for daily consumption? Whenever we want to buy some food, we just create some more money and we buy the food and then we eat it. No, that is not how things work. We only create money for productive assets. We create money to enable us in society to collaborate towards creating productive assets, such as a farm producing food, a factory producing products, a restaurant allowing us to sell and make and sell food to each other, or a retail shop allowing goods to be distributed to neighborhoods closer to people's homes. We also produce other types of assets, and these are the homes that we all live in. And if we look at this, it's two very different groups of assets. The one side one can call the productive economy. So we create these assets, these buildings, these factories, these shops, and we use them to provide products and services to each other. So many people benefit from these assets that are created. The other side one can describe as the non-productive economy. And those are basically our homes which we live in. We don't create a house and then all people in a neighborhood benefit from the house. No, it's pretty much the people living in the house that benefit from it. Okay, so the productive and the non-productive side of the economy. So yes, Vusi is the poster child for money creation of this nature. An entrepreneur having a bright idea and taking our society forward and increasing the wealth of people around them. But the Vusis are not the major ones for which money is created. It's essentially the very rich of any country who have become rich by successfully building up large corporate businesses. The Christo Visas, the Patrice Motsepes, the Ruperts, and so forth, and so forth. And they have become very wealthy, and they own these they're major shareholders in these large corporates which they created. And another mechanism by which we create new assets is many of these rich people have more money than they know what exactly to do with. So they want to invest their money. And they invest this money into private capital firms. So this is not creating new money. It's the rich people taking the existing money which they've collected over years. They can't spend all of it. They want to make more of it. So they want to invest it into asset creation. And these private capital firms are the ones that are the agents of the rich to find business cases and invest and allocate their money appropriately. You can't, as any person, go to a private capital firm. You must be someone that is prepared, that can lose a few million and not be bankrupt. But for regular Joes, you can also invest your money, mostly in pension funds and so forth. And so pension funds, private capital firms, and banks together provide the capital to create new assets in society. The same also applies to government. Government doesn't actually just print money. It doesn't create money. When the government wants to build a road or do something, it must also create some sort of a business plan. Now, normally these business plans are not that great, and they're at a very high level. The business plan is basically someone must believe that the government will be able to collect tax to pay back whatever loans it makes. So the bank goes to a combination of private capital firms who are about and pension funds, which focus basically on reallocating existing money, as well as the banks which create money out of thin air based upon new debt in society. So the bank can go to these combinations of folks and borrow 200 million rand and build more schools and roads. So what we see is that if a private person goes to a combination of banks and capital firms, so again the difference is banks create new money based upon debt, and capital firms are about reallocation of existing money that is already floating around society. And if this person goes to these combinations, these groups, they can take out a loan, and if they can create a successful business with that loan and pay back the debt, they now own a new private asset. And if we do this in terms of government also getting money and successfully pays back the debt, we have created a publicly owned asset. So if you take private risk and your business case pans out, you own the asset associated with that private risk. And if we as a society take some risk and we are able to pay back the debt, we have basically, as a society, we own a greater number of assets. So banks are societal business case evaluators. If they believe in a business case, they create the money for entrepreneurs, capitalists to realize it and create the debt against the entrepreneur capitalist. If the banks get it wrong, they become liable for the debt backing up the money that was created. In addition, the entrepreneur capitalist loses money and risks being declared bankrupt. So everyone is pretty careful about creating new money in society. So let's just sort of recap how all this hangs together. So rich people that have existing money and pension funds and so forth go to banks and say, we have a business plan and we'd like to execute this business plan via some of our major corporates. So we want to create a new mine, a new shopping center, whatever the case may be. And often these rich people and pension funds and so forth put up some of their own cash as a sort of a almost like a deposit that they are prepared to put at risk. And if the bank likes the business plan and they think enough risk has been put up by the capitalists or the financiers, they say, great stuff, we will create even more money backed up by this 10 billion rand of debt which you now owe us. And we will use this money to go and create more assets in society, more farms, mines, factories, and shops. And, of course, there are also the VUSIs, but the vast majority are the folks that are already rich or the large pension funds and so forth. Well, this creates lots of new jobs. Many people that are now working with these assets that have been created, creating and providing products and services to all of us. That means the banks now see them as creditworthy, these people that now have jobs. And if you have a job, the bank will lend you money for a house. So let's say the bank creates 8 billion rand of debt together for all these people that now have jobs. And also the other side of the debt, which is the cash. And the cash is then used to pay the people that build homes for those that have jobs. So a great story. And the government, in turn, people think that, wow, the economy is growing and more factories and so forth, so the government will probably in future be able to pay tax. So if the government wants to lend money, the banks go, well, yeah, great, this government seems creditworthy, so let's create another 10 billion rand, and the government is the debtor for that 10 billion rand, and the associated cash is used to pay people to create clinics and schools and roads and so forth. So this is sort of how the whole game sort of works. But please notice that in order to build homes for people, they must first get jobs and be part of a productive part of society. That's sort of how we work currently. If you got a job and you produce some kind of product and service which the rest of us can use, then you're creditworthy and you'll get a place to live. You can't get a place to live if you don't have some kind of job, which is a significant problem in our society, as you'll see shortly. So this can be a virtuous circle. The rich folks and the private capital firms and the pension funds and so forth, and the corporates create more infrastructure, and that creates more jobs, and we can get more products and services. Therefore, we can build more homes. Therefore, we pay more taxes, and we can build more common infrastructure, and that makes everyone positive. And the folks with money create more business plans, and the banks create more money, and therefore we create more productive assets, which creates more jobs, which creates more homes for everyone and more tax, and again the circle continues. So you can see that this is a virtuous circle that can be excellent for a country. So that's roughly how South Africa works and how money creation works to create homes and jobs and products and services for all of us. So this seems quite okay. So what's the problem then? Well, let's see in part 2 of this money4mzansi video series, the video that explains to you what is not working. Thank you for your time, and this is money4mzansi, working towards a joy economy for all in South Africa by 2030. Well,